Hi guys, it's Phil from the Millennial Diner podcast. I'm popping on before the start of the show to offer this trigger warning. We are going to be covering Stage 4, which is an album that gets into discussing the loss of a parent. Being a person who's lost a parent myself, I do understand this can be a hard subject to talk about or to even listen to. So, with that in mind, we're offering this trigger warning that perhaps this might not be the episode for you to listen to right now, which is totally fine. Come back when you're ready. Otherwise, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Millennial Diner podcast. It's me, Jeff. I'm here at the diner with Phil as usual, and today, this is super sick. We have Josh here with us today. Say hi, Josh.
Hello, guys.
Josh, we're so excited to have you at the diner. We got Darla, our waitress, here. Darla is tapping her foot, which means she wants that order. So I'll go first. I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do some a vegan pastrami sandwich. Some seitan vegan material for that pastrami. Side of coleslaw, side of fries. Actually, put the coleslaw on the sandwich. What are we doing here? And I'll have a black coffee today. That's good.
No oat milk, just black coffee?
Yeah, just going for black coffee. I can't have the oat milk with the pastrami. It's not gonna
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that makes sense. For me, I'm gonna have the soup of the day, which I saw was a broccoli cheddar.
Yeah.
Seemed really good. I'm gonna pair that with a chicken Caesar salad.
Ooh, nice.
And then Dr. Pepper Easy Ice, just to make it easy.
Oh, perfect. Dr. Pepper, the greatest soda of all time.
It's a treat.
Executive producer Megan, my wife, that's her favorite soda, is the Dr. Pepper. I think I'm going to have, let's see, they've added items to the menu I can see. I would like a rye toast with a little bit of butter and a black coffee. That sounds good. Let's do that.
Wow, you saw the new additions and you just said nope, going back to the old standby.
It's true. I mean, it was hard to miss or notice it because how many additions. They've added like 17 pages to this menu. It just keeps getting bigger.
Well, no need for you to read anything more. You know you're getting every time. Enough of your boring orders. Let's talk here. We got Josh here. Josh, you go to more shows than anybody I think I know currently, which is very. I live vicariously through your Insta stories, and I look forward to every show you go to.
It's been a trek last year and a half. I think I went to almost 96 last year, and it was a little exhausted.
So Josh, I have a question. I'm curious because I had this reaction. Did the lockdown inspire you to and the whole COVID thing when everything kind of went away for a while? Did you feel this I need to go to every single show from now on because I don't want this to ever happen again? Because I had that kind of feeling for a while.
Both. I guess there's more than that, but that definitely having something taken away from you that's just it's very integral to my happiness.
Yeah.
Live music is kind of what makes me want to do tomorrow,
Right.
and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. But also just in the last couple of years, I've just had a lot more disposable income, and it's just way easier to go to shows and living more central. It's really nice to live in LA and be able to have a show every single night if you really, really want to, and go to local things, see openers you saw at other bands at small venues. I would think I was just chasing a high too, where it was just this is fun and let's see how far we can take live, just experiencing as much live music as possible. But
That's
it's
awesome.
exhausting.
Yeah, it gets to that point where you're you know that feeling when you're you have a show and you're I want to go to the show, but I don't want to go, and that feeling of and you hate that feeling because exactly this is the medicine, right? You want to go and enjoy it,
and then you're there and you're oh, nothing matters anymore.
Right, and you get there.
Feels great.
Sometimes it's just getting to the venue is the hard part, for sure. So a little bit. So you live in LA now. What was your story growing up and your relationship with the scene and music in general? What kind of got you involved and brought you in?
So I grew up in the foothills of LA. So on the other side of the mountain of Burbank.
Yeah.
So it's pretty secluded. So I didn't go to a lot of live music growing up. That coupled with strict parents that thought anything like that was a waste of time and money and things like that. I think growing up in the age of the internet that I did, I'm 31. So just kind of you had LimeWire, then you had torrenting, and you
Yeah.
had YouTube where you could watch anything you wanted, music videos at anytime I wanted to like listen to something, I had access to it, and I think I just was absorbing music as growing up, and then growing up's really hard. So
Yeah.
having music and like people that are like only a couple years older than you saying the things that you're feeling and like in an angry or like exciting way, like kind of really speaks to you, and it spoke to me. So I think music was always something that I was really curious about, and like always like found wanting more. Like I was never satisfied with what I had when it
Right.
came to listening to music. It was always listening to more, finding more. But I didn't have like live music to like find openers. So I had a lot of friends that were really into music that would share music. But I wasn't until I adult that I really like started exploring and like going to shows and doing everything when I was able to afford it and was on my own and doing that. So that's kind of my relationship with it. And I think that's why I'm like so pedal to the metal with it in my
Yeah.
like or like mid adult era now,
Yeah.
where it's just kind of why not? I never burnt out early, so I just have the way to do it now.
No, that I totally understand that. Like, I didn't really go to shows until like after high school. Like, even though like there were people going to shows and we had like a whole scene and stuff. Like, for whatever reason, I didn't know I had access to that. And then when I finally realized I could, it was like, well, now I'm gonna go see everybody and everything forever.
And it's like I had friends in like 2005, 2006 driving to like Arizona to go see
Yeah.
AFI and things. So it's like I had it around me, but I just never had access myself to be
Yeah.
able to like I guess go to that next step. So I really kind of just delved into like album listening was kind of all I did in middle school and high school, and everything was just put it on and listen to it through 100.5 times.
That's awesome. Uh, Phil, if you didn't know, me and Josh met many years ago at this small monthly function in Los Angeles called Emo Night.
I
Very
was wondering.
small. Yeah,
I was
very
wondering.
small.
Yeah.
No one
Tiny.
really goes. No one really goes. No one really talks about it. It's really, you know, six people in a dark room nodding their head along to sad music. No, it's an institution. It's in its 10th year, which is insane to think.
Yeah, that really
And
is.
it's
That really is.
still
Yeah.
relevant, which is odd. Like for something to be able to go on that long and not
Yeah.
like just be like incredibly stale.
Well, it's funny to me because I was thinking like I feel like that if you break down like the core 2000s emo era, I feel like it was less than 10 years.
Mm.
And now
Oh,
emo night
yeah.
itself is longer than the initial like boom of what happened in the 2000s, which is really wild.
I,
It's always been it's this weird thing with emo night, and we're gonna go on this side quest for a second because I love it. But it was what I find funny about it is remember when Jeff we were younger and Josh maybe it was with you as well, but like you'd hear of clubs in the area doing like teen night, and it was always kind of like a joke to us because it was like, oh, it's kind of silly, like what are they gonna do and all that. And it's like the thing I'd always thought would actually work if someone put some effort into it and it would actually survive and live on a long time. And I've always thought of doing that like my own little area, having a place where you can go and enjoy your music at your age and all that. What I love about emo night, it basically took that concept of like the youth night and somehow made it work for these last 10 years. And it's like it's proof that it would work. You get a thing going where folks who want to listen to a certain type of music and you can go and just listen to that type of music and dance around and talk to each other. It is shows success. That's why it's still going around. Who doesn't want to go to emo night? It's fun. You get to hear all your old favorite songs.
Well, I think that's the other part of it I found is, and I remember this because I went to the first LA emo night they ever did
Yeah.
at
mhm.
the shortstop, the infamous,
Shortstop.
the first one. Because when I don't know how I stumbled upon it. It was like on Facebook or something. It just said, "Taking Back Tuesday, come hear all your favorite emo songs in the 2000s." And I was like, I have been waiting for this to happen in like bar club culture. Like I didn't think it would ever happen, because I
Right.
think you go to clubs, kind of there's a certain type of music that you hear at clubs, whether it's like
Right.
pop or hip hop or dance or whatever it is, or EDM. But this was like, oh wait, we can do this kind of music in a club setting and have a party with it, and like that's what I think is so what gives it so much legs. It's just that this is something that everybody wants. This is what you do with your friends, right? You sit there, you put on these songs, you sing along to them at the top of your lungs in the backseat of a car or at a party. Someone throws
Right.
on Taking Back. It's just that's how it goes. And now it's like, oh, here's a place for that you could always go to and do that, just that. And that's what you go to emo night, and like I always go in and I'm like, everyone is having the time of their life. every time I go there.
And like with each other, like there's
Yeah.
no like strangeness in there. Everybody knows why they're there, and like it's a very like safe, comfortable space for people to just kind of interact with like strangers on the same level, and it's kind of really
No.
cool.
Yeah, it's why you make so many emo night friends. It's just kind
Yeah.
of like you can't not because like you're sitting there and you're singing to each other. Like, yeah, it's special. All right, so that we kind of got the idea of how you kind of like got into music. What shaped who shaped your kind of taste and like if you were to have the opportunity to I don't know, let's just say you send a giant lizard like a Godzilla type of, you know, creature to go and step on Mount Rushmore. So we would have to rebuild it.
Re-resurrect it.
Godzilla's gone. The kaiju problem is over. Now there's just rubble. But they tasked you, Josh, to reshape Mount Rushmore. What bands or artists are going on there for you?
So this is going to be a mix of like personal Mount Rushmore with also what I believe like people that shaped the scene or have a significant importance. First is going to be Green Day. It's Green Day. They're why so many people love music. They're why so many people made bands. They
Yep.
made punk accessible and radio friendly and fun. Um, they're still loved. It's kind of hard to argue Green Day.
Yes.
um, Second, I'm going to go with Fall Out Boy. Um, Literal same reasons. So many bands wouldn't be bands without them. Probably specifically Pete Wentz, but you know,
Yeah.
they're better than ever now, which
Yeah.
is insane. For a band to be skyrocketing 30 years, 25, you know, just an insanely long amount of time.
Well, it's funny you say that. Before we continue, we'll just right there. We'll start with your first two.
Mm.
Did you go to the Hella Mega tour a couple
No,
years ago?
I missed Telemega. I just the whole Dodger Stadium and like nosebleeds just didn't do it for
Yeah.
me.
I went and like I hadn't seen Fall Out Boy in a while. It had been like over 10 years since I'd seen them.
Mm-hmm.
And that show, I was like, whoa, I have not been paying attention. This band is so tight and so good now. So when I went on this tour, see the shows in this tour they're currently doing, I can't believe what you said. I'm like, this band is like, I don't know, like I didn't expect a band to get this much better late in their career, but like it's one of the best shows I've ever seen.
It's like seeing like Slipknot live, where it's just like theatrics and like it's so fun to like visually watch, but it like sounds like it's attacking you on like every sense,
Yeah.
and it's so fun.
Awesome. Well, sorry to derail your Mount Rushmore building. So we got
No.
Green Day, Fall Out Boy. Who's next?
We're gonna go with Me Without You as a personal shoe-in, but also they're your favorite band's favorite band.
Exactly.
I don't think any bands that most people like would be who they are without Me Without You. They're so incredibly strong. They mean a lot to me. I like words in music, and I think they paved the way for a lot of people to have like very like spoken wordy, almost like poetry adjacent
Yeah.
approaches to like lyricism and like execution of lyricism versus like trying to make a pretty song.
Well, I don't also, well, on that, I have to let everybody know that you have the greatest Instagram handle of all time.
It's like I've had it for so long, and I'm like, should I change it? Because everyone just thinks I'm straight edge with it, but it is me without brew.
It's so good.
That's hilarious.
Well, I mean, it's like your name is me without brew, but then there's like a picture of you with a PBR, so it's like,
yeah, like,
come on, yeah.
Like, it's just kind of it's come up a couple times. I'm like, but it's so good, and so
it's
I'm
so
like,
good. Yeah.
It'd be hard to ever change it.
No.
And then final is My Chem. They are just I wouldn't be into music without them. They are very important and cool as hell and just dope. I can't find words to talk about My Chem that are just sick.
They are I don't know. I've talked about this a lot, but like I saw them like on one of their like first tours, and like it was like a record scratch, but they were like the opener of like I think it was like a Finch used tour. This is like 2000 early 2002, and My Chem was like one of the openers, and like I was like shook after seeing them. I was like, what is this band? And they were that was just the beginning, and it's like I could
Yeah.
see it, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've never had that feeling before. I was like, oh, this band is different than everybody else. They have something that's, and to this day now they are probably the most iconic band to come out of this whole world.
Yeah, they're like
Yeah.
Metallica of,
Yeah,
like they're just the biggest.
yeah. That's
Like, and just like name, and like image and popularity.
well, those are pretty great. Um, is there a song from one of these bands? And I will say this: one of the bands you've named we have not covered
Oh,
yet.
oh, I'm gonna make everybody listen to me without you.
That's good. That's what I was hoping. Yeah.
I will never pass up an opportunity to be annoying about it.
No,
So,
perfect. That's what I was hoping for.
I think the best intro track for them is January 1979.
Awesome. So we're gonna play that. Let's do it.
Sweet.
Here is January 1979 by Me Without You. Very happy to play a Me Without You song, not a Me Without Brew song, but maybe we'll get Me Without Brew to sing a song a little later in the podcast. But before we do that, speaking of singing, speaking of talk screaming, we're talking about a band, Touche Amore, from Burbank, right? Originally, like that's their
Yeah, Burbank, Glendale.
Burbank, Glendale
I
area,
know
Los Angeles. Yeah, just outside Los Angeles. Well, basically Los Angeles
Los
County.
Angeles. Yeah.
Let's not get into too much geography here. Sorry, Phil's in New Hampshire. So I gotta explain it all to him.
Oh, okay.
What's California? Please explain that to me
Yeah,
again. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, we're talking about Stage 4 by Touche Amore. Stage 4 is the band's fourth album. So the title has a couple meanings. One, it's their fourth album. Two, Stage 4 is a reference to Stage 4 cancer. So we know off the bat that this is a heavy album, lyrically, emotionally. But it's interesting because Touche Amore, every album is heavy emotionally and lyrically. That's the kind of vibe they are. They kind of came out onto like the hardcore scene, and to me, like, what the actual definition of emo is, like emotional hardcore. In a lot of ways, I think Touche Amore is probably the most true modern emo band in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
If you take the old original definition of what it is, because their confessional lyrics about, Jeremy Baum, the singer lyricist. I mean, they're like ripped from his diary, kind of like confessions and like discussions and deep thoughts about like life and things, and like I think that's like what this genre of music does so well. I think Touche Amore is very important in that. Uh, Josh, what's your history of Touche Amore? Like, when did you get into them and such?
So I had never listened to them until I saw them live. They did a co-headline tour with Me Without You in 2014, like
Yeah.
10 years ago, basically. Sea Haven and Drug Church for the opening acts too. It's just like a
Whoa.
crazy ass lineup. I only knew Me Without You. I was like 21 at the time, 2021. I drove down to San Diego and Touche closed, and I swear my head exploded.
Yeah.
I just like was like, what is this? And why have I not? No, like, how did I miss this? And like, this is still like pretty mid in their career. Like, this is not like crazy late to like them, but like I felt I was late to the party.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I feel like around that time, they just toured Southern California nonstop. So I saw them like 4 or 5 times within that, like the next like year or two. And it was just, I never miss them anymore. Like, they're just like one of the bands that I will kind of stop everything to make sure that I go see. It's my favorite live music experience, I think. At least
Yeah.
that's accessible still with the bands that aren't gone.
Right. Yeah, for sure. No, yeah, I think exactly. Like, I feel the same way when I finally saw them live. I remember like they kind of like popped on my radar. I want to say like 2011-ish, maybe around there.
Mm-hmm.
Because they opened for AFI. I couldn't get into the show because it was like AFI played like a smaller venue that they normally played, and like the Fonda they played was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is like, over almost 14 years ago now. So
Yeah,
so AFI playing the Fonda at that point was like, holy crap, but I couldn't get a
that's
ticket.
crazy.
And the tickets were so expensive on resale. But like, I noticed that I had heard about Touche Amore. I saw they were opening. I'm like, oh, That's a big show for them. And then that's when I started kind of like diving into their albums, and I was always really impressed by them. Then I finally saw them. I can't remember the first time I saw them, but one I remember very well was after this album came out. I saw they were on a tour with Thursday, and like I guess Thursday and Touche Amore became like Thursday's like the big brother to Touche Amore, and like
Well, I think Jeremy did Thursday's website like back in the day. He like
yeah,
went up to like Jeff and was like, "Hey, let me build a website for you guys." And
so wild. Yeah, no, like yeah, I've heard him talk about stories about how he would just like pester Thursday when they would come to town and stuff, and like yeah, um, but yeah, so they big very much that part of that like that wave of emo that kind of happened with like I remember Joyce Manor, Tiger's Jaw, all these bands were kind of popping up around the same time, and like this was like the new generation of emo bands. Now that basically emo kind of the 2000s emo swelled to like ridiculousness and kind of collapsed a little bit for a while, and My Chem broke up. Fall Out Boy was on their hiatus, not
yeah,
breakup as they call it. All this
Yeah.
stuff happened, and like there was kind of like a lull, and then like when there's a lull, the scene kind of grows back up like that. But we get to 2016 for this album. Like I said, it's a heavy album, but it's an interesting one because we get him singing on this album, which more so I feel like. Or what do you think? Like,
it's like more melodic in some ways,
yeah,
I think, than where like previous albums. It's very like punchy. It's like other albums lean on the hardcore, I think, more, where this is like more leaning on like the emotional
right,
of like that dichotomy.
yeah. Uh, Epitaph Records, produced by Brad Wood. The album is a searing confessional of raw, pain, sorrowful, explosive exploration of grief. Like that's what this album is. It's it's a lot of times we'll talk about albums. We won't talk too much about like the real story behind it because like you want to let the musician artist write their characters and their stories. You don't want to say, oh, this is them, but like this is hard to talk about that way because this album is a reaction by Jeremy to his mother's death of cancer um, at the age of 69, and it's the album tracks basically the journey of grief that he has in a very beautiful way, in a very like in a very structured way too. Like there's some like there I'm always impressed like how he'll mention something early in a song, and you got to remember it because it's going to come back in a later song, and
Right.
or he'll fill in some blanks later on other songs and things like that.
I feel like for this album too, it kind of tracks a little backwards where you kind of get the whole story up front and then you kind of get different pieces that kind of
Right.
go back and forth. So like it makes those little breadcrumbs really important because they do come up.
This is also very exciting because this happens once in a while on this podcast where one of us didn't listen to the album before we decided to cover it. So I'm very excited to hear Phil's reactions because he hadn't really spent any time with this album until we were going to cover it.
You want to talk about late to the party? Hi, I am late to the I am late to the party. So this was when Jeff approached me with this one, when giving the subject matter, I was like, I don't know.
Trying to fix my lighting, my bad.
I was like, let me think on this one. For various reasons. And I'm glad I got the chance to listen to this. I would have actually loved to have listened to this when it came out versus now. So because listening to it, it's funny how much I hear other bands like rooted in Touche Amore. Well, one, thank you, Jeff, for telling me how to say the band's name. I always appreciate that. Because I was like Touche Amore. No, so Touche Amore. And listening to it, it makes me happy to hear the roots of so many what I think other bands in Touche Amore's music, which made me excited to hear like how much of an impact the music. I was, when other albums came out, I was younger, and like say like, well, obviously Phil, because you're an old man now, but like I'll take like this time next year with Movie Life, right? I listen to this, I hear so much melodic hardcore, early melodic hardcore with like Movie Life, and I can hear it with like Take It Back Sunday, and I can hear a lot. There was like Saves Day elements there, but definitely Thursday, which was funny to hear how much he was pestering Jeff with that. Not you, Jeff. Jeff with a G.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a really great. It was so listening to this album the first time was a very bittersweet moment for me because I got to hear a newer version of what emo was in music because I kind of stopped paying attention around the 2012. So I was like, none of these bands are doing it for me. I kind of got out of it, only to go back and be like, wow, there were bands that came out at this point that I'm very much into, like Modern Baseball and Title Fight, and now with this, like I just like, wow, okay, so there were really good albums, to be frank, that came out there in that time frame. So that's the positive side of it. So the negative side of it is more just that, like, wow, this is a lot to take in. Um, I love the kind of dichotomous nature of the music and the lyrics. So Jeff, you had brought up like old school emo, like late 80s, straight out of the DC scene kind of emo. And I'm like, yes, that's what this feels like. Because musically, it's kind of like they get heavy at times, but they're also kind of it's very melodic, very soft at times. And it's very like very almost I want to use like the word like candid with them, that it's just this kind of soft thing that it kind of you talk too much about it, it'll just like whisper away. And then the singing starts or the screaming starts, and you're like, this is heavy, this is loud, it's in your face. But then you have great moments where he's actually singing. And so it was a very strange feeling to go through this album. For a bunch of reasons. One of which is that the fact that my mom had passed away a couple years ago, and to hear an album about the entire album is about the dude's mom passing away. So that was like I had to mentally prepare myself a little bit to endure this, and I'm glad I did because I think it's a strong album by a band I hadn't really paid attention to, and I ought to have, because now I'll go back and listen to it. Listen to the previous stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit it. Like that's the
Yeah.
reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot to take in. I actually, while I had a moment here, Josh, while I was looking something up. Brad Wood, the producer of this album, can you guess? One, two, three, four Me Without You albums. He was either the producer or the recorded with it. So I was just thought that in there, threw that in there for you.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's all connected. It's
All
all
connected,
all
really
connected.
is, really is. Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
so yeah, Phil, you mentioned like how hard this album is just for I think for anybody, but like I have a visceral reaction to hearing this album for the first time. I remember where I was. I was in Burbank at a Pavilion's parking lot when I heard New Halloween for the first time. Like I
mm,
put the album on while I was driving. I was a PA for and doing like a run at the supermarket. So I was going to Pavilions and was like, well, I'm on my PA run, so I might as well listen to some good music. Oh, the new Touche's out. Let's put this on.
Put it
And
on.
I didn't get out of the car during New Halloween. I was just like, oh, oh God. I was like gutted just through empathy with what the way Jeremy was delivering this emotion and this pain hit me so hard. And like I was like, this poor I felt so horrible for him, like the
yeah.
pain he was going through. And I had this like thought in my head where I was like, I don't know how I would be able to handle this. And then the tragedy of life that sometimes you have to deal with it. And for me, 8 months later, I did have to deal with this, and I lost my mom to cancer pretty quickly. So like in a way, I reflected back on this album. It took me a little while to actually listen to it again, but like I am so grateful to have this as this roadmap to grief that someone else is sharing their experience in such an emotive and powerful way. It make I think anybody who's lost somebody, and this is your kind of music, this is like this is your friend to like help you through it. Like, and I hope that he realizes, Jeremy, like, because it's so vulnerable to do this,
Mhm,
so vulnerable to put all this
mhm.
out here and use your band as your vehicle for this. Um, but like I'm so grateful that he did because this is something we can all kind of like use for our own grief.
I think like one of the biggest like dangers of doing something like that too is just always having to be constantly reminded of it. As an
Yeah,
artist, you're gonna have people coming up
Yeah.
to you all the time and being like, "This meant so much," and just kind of like reopening the wound. Even not, it's not intentional, and it
right.
comes from the best places, but like when you do something like that, that's something you kind of know you're going to have to deal with, is like, I'm never not going to be able to not be surrounded by like this grief in some way or another.
No, and I think you're right. And I think that, you're right. I wonder how much he pre-thought that, because I'm sure for his entire career now, like, because he's very accessible. I mean, this scene, it's not like hard to, like, you know, see
No,
see
it's,
these see these guys around and everything like that. But like, yeah, like how many people have come up to him and been like, "Oh, I lost somebody and thank you," and like, that's a lot to have to put onto him. He's got to. I wonder how he navigates that, because I feel like that's a lot of people coming in with very heavy things probably, and putting that.
yeah, and
Does
like
he?
confessing heavy things, and it's
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And like from strangers, like, let's face it, like they have a parasocial relationship with you.
mhm,
They know your story, but they're just like, there's some guy coming or a girl coming up to you and being like, "Here's my trauma," you know,
yeah. So it creates a heavy burden, I think.
for sure. Um, well, why don't we get into it? Because this album starts ferociously and it doesn't let up. Well, I'll just say this. So the story, what's important biographically is Jeremy's mother passed away in California, Southern California, on Halloween, in 2014, I believe. And Jeremy was with Touche Amore on stage playing Fest in Gainesville, Florida on Halloween. And that will come up in the course of the
Right.
album itself, where that information comes. But that's kind of like what it's a very important moment to know that he was performing with Touche Amore on this the most worst moment of his life, I would imagine at this point. All right, first track, "Flowers in You." What do you think about this song?
This is probably my second favorite song on the album, and
Yeah,
like damn near close to the first. It's an incredible experience to listen to be quite honest. And like hearing it live is even crazier,
yeah,
because that like wall of sound just like never stops hitting you. The song in the background, it's wild.
yeah. It's that yeah. It's such a like I would say live. Like I've heard it live, and it's just like whoa. But even in the album itself, it just like kind of like hits you really fast and hard, and
Hmm.
it's like, but like you hear the lyrics of this one, and the thing about Jeremy again is like the poetry,
It's
and like
Mm.
and a lot of this album, not even like just poetry, like he doesn't even use metaphor a lot in this album. Sometimes it's just like, this is the thing that happened, here is what I'm feeling, and it's like very concise and clear. um like I took inventory of what I took for granted and ended up with more than I imagined. This idea of like realizing how much he took for granted, but and didn't realize that what would have cost the cost would be when the loss happened. um it's just like kind of like a warning, basically, almost, to people listening, like, don't take things for granted, because
Right. Yeah, because like he even says like it was just a simple conversation about nothing. Like it couldn't keep me in the room. I just kept walking down the hall, and it was like little things like that. Like he's making the analogous moment of just having a conversation with a person, is like something you take for granted, that it just suddenly one day you can't. And that was like so losing my mom with that was one of the first things I can never talk to her again.
yeah.
And like that is a mind fuck in the moment. It really is. And then to hear him talk about it, and it was like, because that's one of the first things I thought about, and it was just this weird thing that like that can that's what it is now. And to hear him talk about that, like he was saying how people would come up to him and just be like, thanks for writing. Like that was the first time I was like, okay, so this guy kind of knows what I'm thinking about, and I kind of know what he's thinking about. So I made an immediate connection with just that simple thing of like just taking the act of being able to talk to somebody for granted, because one day you won't be able to do that. That was a crazy. It is still. I even think about it right this very second. Talking with you guys is a very emotional thing to think about. That is just something that it just goes away, and you will. We all do it every moment. It might be
Mhm.
the last time you talk to that person, and that's really weird to think about.
It's a mind fuck.
Like
Yeah.
it just fucks with your head really quick when you start going like that. This is literally it. It could be it, right? Very strange thing to think about.
I
No,
think the
okay.
I think one of the themes of the album that I most identify with is the like struggle with faith and
Yeah.
having that person be someone that's so deeply rooted in faith and religion, whereas you aren't, and having to navigate that, and just even like the pressure that that applies, and just seeing someone like not even being able to comprehend like why you don't understand their position on where they're at, kind of. And I think this song really delves into that and kind of lets you know early, like this is going to be a theme. Like this is we're going to be hearing about this.
100%. Yeah, and it's come up a lot in other songs down the line, but like even in this one, it's like I apologize for the grief when you talk about belief. Like he's like struggling with this like pain, this he his well the first line of the album, we should say, get there is I'm heartsick and well rehearsed, highly decorated with a badge that reads "It could be worse." So prideful, I choose to live in disguise with a levee set for my heavy eyes. Like that's the beginning. I'm heartsick and I'm homesick, living in the past. Like these feel like I can't go back. And I want to go back, and like I'm struggling with my fate that I don't really have, that my mom had, and like this one is also, I think, the why I like it as the first song is because it's a little more generalization of
It
than
paints the
specifics.
picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like yeah, it's the thesis of the album, right?
And when I listened to it, I immediately imagined, because the title, me and titles, Jeff, like the title came in and it's like flowers and you. I had, and the way that he says, so prideful, I choose to live in disguise, which means he's not dealing with it, right? It's
Mhm.
so proud he's just going to be in disguise. But I also took it because of the title, Flowers and You. I had this vague sense, I'm like, is he at the funeral? Are we like, is that where we're at right now? Like not biological, like chronologically, that's where we are. Is because he's like well rehearsed. He's thought about this, and so prideful. I chose to live in the sky. Like he's basically putting up a front, a mask, right, to be during the funeral. Because I know I did that, and I think, and I feel it was the reason why I also think that is because the next song's New Halloween, which is still although it's the time jump to the next year, it's also continuing that concept of a mask, right? Because in Halloween we wear costumes. So that's why I feel like that's just me, my mind is running with it, making sense of a story that perhaps there isn't a story to make sense of. But
Mhm.
there you go.
No, but I think the jumping around is part of it because once we get into the album, I mean, that's part of grief because you are jumping around, right? Like
Right.
you're in the past because that's the only place you have the person. Um, you know, Phil, you brought up this idea again earlier about like you can't talk to the person. And then we just have these memories of things, and I know that much like Jeremy, and we'll talk about this more as we go through it. I have voicemails left over, and there are times when it took a long time to be able to listen to those voicemails,
Mm.
and now I'm very happy to have, grateful to have those voicemails.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's this. I think the jumping around in time is part of the grief process, and for sure, because it's everything's kind of your brain's scattered, for a long time before it gets better. Um, I think we should play this one because
agreed. Yeah,
it's like you said, Josh. It's easily one of the best songs on the album. It's an incredible opener, and it really grabs you by the throat and says, "Get ready, because this is going to be a rough one." All right, so here is "Flowers in You." The next track, this is one I mentioned earlier that I heard in the car in the parking lot at the Pavilions Burbank, and
I
like,
can't, I can't even for you, man. Like I'm just trying to think about like you're
I know
Jeff.
the
This
pavilions he's talking about too.
yeah, yeah.
it's just when you were telling that story, Jeff, it made me think of when we saw Requiem for a Dream.
Uh-huh.
And so we get to the movie. So Jeff and I go watch the movie. We credits roll up. Jeff and I are completely silent as we're watching the credits for a second. Neither one of us say anything. We just both just get up, go to my car, start driving back. And I think we're a good halfway into it before one of us even says a thing to the other. It was just that much of a mind fuck what that movie is. And I feel like just listening, that was the immediate image I had of you just sitting there listening to the song, like, what? Where do I go from here now after hearing this song? I mean, oh my gosh,
I gotta go
talk
back to
about a
work.
heavy song. Am I not? I can't go back to work after this.
I'm like, sorry, I can't work ever again. I have to go lay down on the floor somewhere.
Yeah.
Uh,
So there's so much. And then Jeff, the other thing that popped in my head when I was listening to this song for myself is the reference to what Sarah said,
yeah,
which
That
we've
it's
it's like let's like conjure up one of the saddest songs ever. Please, let's do that. Because I remember when we covered the Death Cab, when we covered that album, we talked about that song in a long time about just the impact of that song, and then to have this song reference that song, I'm like, really, we're just in a double whammy of the sadness right now. My goodness.
I mean, for me, especially in my own grief, when I went back to this album to work through it, like I had forgotten that line, and I talked about this when we covered Plans way back when, one of our early episodes. When I was in the hospital, the room where like it was ending, everything was ending.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What Sarah said was playing in my head, and like I didn't like conjure it up; it was just there. That's the song. That was just the chorus. That song was just repeating in my head, and it was like loud and clear. So it had that moment of like, oh, this is music. What's meant to do in my life, which is save my life, and here it is in one of the hardest moments of my life. And that, even though I didn't have access to it, my brain was like, well, we're playing it in our head right now, so here we go. So when he talks about that and he's like, he can't even listen to it, it's like, oh, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I get it.
it's
I
Yeah.
get it.
this song. I mean, to me, I'm in love with his writing in this song and a lot of these songs. I just think he's such an incredible writer. Um, he's a little vague here, but he'll fill in some details later, like how's it always been a year. But the confessionality of it, like I haven't been. The song ends with him saying, "I haven't found the courage to listen to your last message to me."
It's him even after a year dealing with the guilt of it, like, I mean,
Yeah,
that's gonna sit with you for a while, knowing that, like, that there's a voicemail that you hadn't even listened to yet. I mean, just how hard it is to finally do it, even if you don't want, you know what, and you don't even have to if you really don't want to. And then there's no right or wrong to that. You do whatever you think works best for you. I mean, it took me forever to be able to like watch a video with my mom in it. It took me forever. I mean, even then, it still bothers me. I mean, or if I like, I still have her number in my my phone. I don't call it, but it's just there.
yeah.
But I've got all these text messages, never get rid of them. But like, it's definitely there's that reminder, and I feel like he's not sort of dealing with it either because I think this song really sets the stage for the fact that he hasn't listened to the message,
Yeah.
and that is
Mhm.
what's going to be like the overarching theme to get to like catharsis to get there is to finally be able to listen to the message, in the end. And that's why it's just there's like a lot of conceptual album elements to this, and I think that's one of the like that thing like we have to get to that part where you can do it and and you be okay.
Well, yeah, and that when I was saying earlier about the writing, like that's what I love
Yeah,
about it. Like
yeah,
that, because he just because that's the arc. He's kicked off the story. Like you're kind of left feeling like, oh, when will he ever be able to listen to that message? Like, what's it going to take to get there?
right.
Um, and
I
then
think
the
the
other,
jump I think the
go ahead.
jump from the first song to this song too being like a strict like the death and like Phil was saying the funeral to a year later within, you know, a minute and a half of time from when we're listening kind of really shows that like it takes time to be able to grieve. Like you can't it's that hard a year later.
Yeah, well, and I think
Mm.
that's the message he's giving to people, right? Like, somehow it's already been a year, and this is how I'm still feeling. And coinciding with the guilt of knowing I wasn't there. And again, he says he wasn't there, and we're like, oh, why wasn't he there? And we're gonna get that information down the line
Hmm.
in other songs. But yeah, you're 100% right, Josh. Like he's like, it's still horrible. It's still, I'm not through this.
And I know he makes like a very conscious decision to change the year when they perform the song live too, so that it's been 9 years, 8 years.
Yeah.
And so to really kind of drive that home, that like it's never really over. You're always not past it.
Yeah. Somehow it's already been well, 10 years at this point, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
it's powerful. I mean, even the title, Phil, going back to like your title of New Halloween, like
Yeah.
it changes that it just changed Halloween for him. His whole, Halloween is one thing, and then because of this, Halloween is a new thing. It's not about, you know, costumes and trick-or-treating anymore. It's about remembering the day his mom died. Also, what Sarah said by Death Cab, and then Benji was
Uh,
from
S-
what's
Sun
Sun Kill
Kill
Moon.
Moon.
Sun Kill
Sun
Moon,
Kill
yeah.
Moon. Yeah.
Yeah.
And which, the name of the song is I Can't Live Without My Mother. I mean, it's just, whew, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you, man. I mean, I really do. Um, it's a really good point, Jeff. The fact you said New Halloween, the title, because titles matter, and I think titles should matter. Like even the title of the next song. I mean, it
Oh
just
yeah.
fits.
I
Um,
I I think this is an album where like the song titles really it's so clear that they're like specifically picked out.
yes,
More than like a lot of other albums. I feel like sometimes that gets lost, especially like this age of music. That the year that this came out, I haven't seen it be so focused.
excellent point. Yeah, it's the New Halloween. It's changed the meaning, the day, and all of that. I mean, my mom passed away 2 days in front of Christmas, 3 days in front of Christmas. Sorry, and like I Christmas is kind of a weird time for me now. It is. It
Yeah.
just is. You know, it
Yeah.
it it, it don't I don't look forward to the 22nd of December. I just don't. And it has which really sucked. And I had to to be frank, I had to suck that up
Right.
because I've got little kids.
Yeah.
And there's a connection, like that it's supposed to be a magical time for them. And like that was hard. It's still hard. December 22nd, every time I see it's coming, I get all pissed off about it. My wife knows about it, but like I'll get a little annoyed that day. Every year, and I text my sisters. I'm like, I don't like today,
Yeah.
not in the slightest, guys. And it does impact it particularly for the first year, after the first year after was it's just like yeah, this it bittersweet's the meaning of the day for me, for the family. But it's gotten better. Admittedly, it has gotten better, but it does not, like Josh, you said, it doesn't go away. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Well, a couple things off that, Phil, and then we'll get back to the album. But yeah, my mom passed away like a couple days before Mother's Day.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and I'm on the West Coast, and my family's on the East Coast, and I had to fly home in an emergency situation, and I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't know if I was going to be going to a funeral or not, but I couldn't like pack a suit because I was like, I don't want that to be real.
yeah.
So
That feels like too much of a
yeah,
like an
like
omen. Like
yeah. So I get there, she passed away. I had to go to the mall and get like a suit for something for the funeral. But it's because it's Mother's Day. I'm walking through this mall, and it's
Uh,
just Mother's Day. Like, buy your mom this, buy your mom that. But I'm just like, it was almost like for me. I thought like this is almost so over the top. It's hilarious because it's like, what? Like,
yeah,
how? Yeah. But
yeah, like
yeah. So yeah, so the changing of the holidays is always going to be a thing for this. It just changes things, right?
it does. Yeah, no, it does.
Let's play this one.
Okay.
just the whole album. We're gonna put.
It's gonna be a tough one. There's albums like that where I'm like, no, but definitely New Halloween. Here's New Halloween. Track 3, Rapture.
Here
Yeah.
comes the rapture. Here comes the rapture. Like the rapture takes the good, it leaves the wicked behind. Oh my gosh. Oh, this song. Okay. All right, hang on. I gotta muster the energy for for this one. Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's really what it's just Josh, you said with the titles matter, the rapture, which we're bringing up the rapture. Like, it's just there's a wave, the rapture comes. I grew up in Christianity, and the rapture's when all the good folks get taken up to heaven, and then everybody who's left behind, the wicked, they inherit the earth behind, or the land behind. That's essentially what it is. And if that's kind of, I'm assuming that's what he's feeling like. That basically, his mom was taken up to go up to heaven, and leaving him behind, and that he feels, and sees himself as being the wicked who gets left behind in a very concise way. Has that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's he's left behind, and I mean, what I think for this song, when it gets to this like something you love is gone, and he just repeats it and repeats it and repeats it.
Right.
It's just like because he can't something you love is gone and like you can't accept it, right? It's like too hard to understand that it's just gone. Like all of a sudden, like the rapture, it's gone.
Like
Gone.
there's just like no comprehension of like being able to deal with like even like that inner point of start to end of that process. It's just
He used like in the way the words he used, very smart word choice throughout. But he goes and leaves you fractured.
Mhm.
Like that is such a fantastic word choice, an adjective for this is because that is how you feel. Like you're not even broken, like you're
Right.
Yeah.
fractured. Like, like because like to be frank, broken implies there's a chance it could be fixed. Like
Yeah.
fractured is like there's so you're like spider webbed. That's how fractured. That's going to take a lot. Case folks at home who are listening to it, in case you haven't put this together, it takes you a long time to get over these things. It's been years for me, and I'm still not even over. I still feel like fractured by it, and that's why that word choice is so smart because that is how it feels. It feels fractured. I'm not broken. I'm not destroyed. I am in a billion little pieces. I'm fractured. That's how crazy that word is. And I think it fits. It really fits. I also, can you guys believe the fact that this was a single?
Mm-hmm.
Like the fourth one, mind you, but still, it's a single. Like this is still
Yeah.
this is still what they're going to put up front as a means to get people to buy the album.
Yeah.
I mean, oh goodness gracious.
I always love this line here. I saw the glass as half full, so I felt I could ask for more. I was comfortable. It spilled
Mhm.
over onto the floor. I begged to come back to before, with the damage done and the damage won. What do you guys think that what he's saying there?
For me, it's like kind of living life with like a gleeful optimism when you're doing good and you're on top. When you don't have to be on top, but like when you don't have big problems, you feel like everything's kind of just in you take things in strides. And then once that glass empties, all of that's on the floor. You don't have any of that anymore. And you're just kind of left with the glass. You know, it can only spill what it contains is what's there for me. So it's like you don't have that optimism anymore and you can't put it back in either. And now you're
Yeah,
just kind of left with like going on in life without being able to have that anymore.
yeah, I think that's 100% it. It's
The only other thing I would add to that is the damage done. Just makes me think of Neil Young and where the song is "The Needle and the Damage Done." And although I don't think we're doing drugs or anything right here, but doesn't mean we're not necessarily doing drugs here. But I'm just saying that something something has occurred and there is long-term permanent damage having been done, like the fracture, the glass being
Mhm.
broken, whatever. Yeah.
well, damage done and damage won. Like damage, it's again, you're back to you're fractured forever. Like
Yeah,
that's yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Also, you said Neil Young, but also Thursday. Also.
And Thursday. That's right. Yes, you're right. And also Thursday.
All right. Well, we're gonna play Rapture because we're just gonna keep playing. So here is Rapture. Track 4, Displacement.
I'm trying to remember what displacement is. It's a scientific term, isn't it?
Well, while you look that up, this is coming to what Josh mentioned earlier about the fight with the religion very quickly on this song.
Very quickly. Yes.
I
Yeah.
asked your God, how could you? But I never heard an answer. Yeah.
Gosh. Displacement is the movement of something from its place or position. So it's the occupation by a submerged body or part of a body of a volume which would otherwise be occupied by a fluid. Scientific answer there. Yes, the movement of something from its place to or position. So it's movement. It's being displaced. And then we're gonna bring in all the religious stuff here. Yeah. So here we
Yeah.
go. Let's do this. Yeah, because he's like questioning like God and beliefs, but I don't know, kind of.
Well, he's
Is it?
struggling with it, right?
Yeah. Right.
Because it's like this
Exactly.
whole idea of faith. Because then he has that line of like, last week I crashed my car and I walked away unscathed. maybe that was you asking me to keep my faith. Like, he is like going back and forth here. Like, was that? Yeah.
It's those things where you're just like, wait, they talked about how there's this higher power and that there's this thing that's kind of looking out for me, especially when they're gone. And then you have these moments where like you're like, wait, is something really looking after me? But then like never being able to really kind of be convinced and just being like, I still can't adhere to what you believed in. It's unfortunately.
Yeah. He's trying, right? He's trying. He's
Yeah.
looking for those
Well,
hints or those
it's like,
signs.
well, when he says like, you'd cry at the thought of never seeing me again, where they're sitting there going, I'm, believing in heaven is essentially what I take out of that, and being like, because you don't believe in heaven, I'm never going to see you there because that's where I'm going. And I've been on that other side of the coin where it's just like having people like telling you on their deathbed, you
Right.
need to believe in God to see me. And you're just like, it's so fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is so fucked up.
It's like,
Uh,
and again, it comes from like a good, it's not
Right.
wrong. It's just like you're making something that's already incredibly hard to navigate in real time, just
mm,
so much more convoluted.
Absolutely. And it's like putting that on another person. It's like, everyone, people are going to see what existence is, however they see it. I mean, and we don't have to get into like a full
Yeah.
uh
theological
dissertation,
debate. Yeah.
theological
Yeah.
debate here.
Okay.
Yeah. And as a
Yeah.
dissertation of like, well, why people need religion or turn to religion, because they don't have answers, right? And that's what
Right.
religion fulfills that for people, where it's like, I don't understand this, I'm scared about what happens after I die, and like religion gives you an answer that is an appeasement for your existence while you're alive.
Right.
And yeah.
There's comfort in it, right?
Right.
There is.
Right.
Yeah,
I
no,
completely
definitely.
I completely understand it. Like I do. I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
not a religious person. I don't think I'm ever going to be, but I'm only halfway through life, so who knows where I am at the end.
Yeah.
But like I understand and I really can. I can understand why it not, I guess, attractive is that it brings you some comfort of knowing that there aren't answers out there, but at least this gives you something to hold on to, and maybe that will make you happy and comfortable toward at the end. I mean, I get it, totally get it. But I don't get it. This was a single. That I don't like. I just don't get it. This is the second single. I looking at all the songs, I'm like, how did any of these songs sell an album? Like it just boggles my mind to think about that these were singles.
Well,
Um,
I mean, the thing is, Touche Amore isn't exactly going on K Rock or whatever. Like,
this is true. This is true.
yeah.
You're right. No,
Yeah.
this is true.
For them, it's like, what 7 inch are they going to put out, or like,
Yeah, right.
things like that. Like, um,
It's such a funny
Music
thing.
nerds love them.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they do. Yeah, exactly. Just I don't know if I like that first single, but that second single really got me to get the album. I mean, just let's have a question about how I feel about religion. That's great. Let's do. Well, I mean, I do that all the time, so that's okay. Uh,
No, Touche Amore is a band you don't hear a song and be like, oh, I'm gonna listen to that. It's a band you see and have a your own religious experience, like
yeah,
Josh, or your friend who's your co-host on a podcast says you got to listen to this album, then you do.
pretty much. Yeah, I feel like that's where we're at with this, and that's okay. That's totally fine. I'm in for that.
But I will say, I mean, it's interesting too, because I think, just a little more Touche, like their last album they put out, which came out in 2020,
Like
like
mid-pandemic.
mid-pandemic, they had to do one of those live stream
Yeah,
album shows on the interwebs because they couldn't have people at their show. I mean, that album, if I love it, but it is like, if you think this one's hooky, that one is even more melodic and even more kind of like pushing them in like a direction. So I'm sure there are people who probably will get on that album, and then they'll start going back,
yeah.
and then they'll hit this one and be like, whoa.
Yeah.
I look forward to them seeing. Yeah, it's like me. Like, you'll come back like, wow, so that's a lot to take in. Wow, glad I got to this one at that point.
You can't even
Just,
ignore it in this one. Like you can't just be like, "Oh, I had no idea." Like it just kind of punches you in the face every song about.
yeah. Yeah, by now we're what? Almost at 1, 2, 3, 4. We're only 4 songs in. I thought we were farther in, but we're 4 songs in. You're very aware of what this album is about. I mean, well, this is also the first time they literally he brings up stage 4, right? Is where it comes in. So like you're getting the title in now. You're getting the bits of the pieces. If you hadn't gotten it earlier, you're getting a lot of answers in this song.
And it opens with "You died at 69." Like it's like you died. Like it's now
Yes.
like the direction is being sent to her, right? Like he's talking to her. I asked her, God, how could you? You know what I mean? Like he's talking, trying to have this dialogue with her, which obviously she can't talk back with.
She can't, right? But we're going through the stages of grief, really. Like right now, we're the angry part.
Yes, yeah.
Like that's, and I remember having this feeling where I was very angry. And it's just as well. Jeff, you said it's like this is like a piece of like listening to someone go through grieving someone and all the stages that go in, and you really do, you get it all in here. And then this is where we're at the part where we're at anger, at the person, which is a very visceral feeling. It's a real feeling, and it's one that you're allowed to have because you need you need to have it to start getting your way through on the other side.
Yeah. I
One,
mean, go ahead.
I might not be, I'm not an expert by any means, but don't cancer cells displace normal cells
That's
as well?
yeah. That's really
Yeah,
great.
that's
Yeah.
really great. Good job, sir.
I was like, wait, I think this is how it works.
No, we love when that happens. We love when that's awesome. That is, I think you're 100% right. That is clearly what it is, right? Like, it's it makes me love this song even more. That he's literally
like,
just talking about the cancer cells. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
All right, Jeff,
Yeah.
you ready? Are we ready to play this one now too? We're gonna
we are gonna play this one, but I just want to like the final lines of it. She gave me her best. She swore I was her heart. I couldn't worship the God that let her fall apart. Like he reaches that point where he's like, no, I'm not gonna be religious. You know what I mean? He kind of it's he tries. He definitely tries to think about it, and we'll talk about well, the next one is gonna get into religion as well, based on that title. But before we get there, here is Displacement. Track 5, Benediction. Phil, can you explain to me what benediction is? Because I don't know what it is.
I sure can. It is like I actually know this one. I don't even have to look this one up. It's the blessing at the end of a service, at the end of like a church service or whatnot. It's the blessing at the end. Usually it ends with the benediction.
English muffin, hollandaise sauce. Yeah.
That's the best. Go for a nice good eggs benediction. That sounds tasty right now. Just kidding, Jeff. I'm sticking to my rye toast and my black coffee. Thanks so much.
Old Faithful.
Old Faithful.
I always think record scratch on this one because there's a vocal shift to this song.
It threw me for a loop when I was listening to it. I was like, whoa, time out. But at this point, we're in track 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're in track 5. And I was like, okay, I think I had a feeling who this band was. And they're like, okay, now we're singing. This is a little different. Threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, he's singing. Yeah.
He's singing, yep.
The first line too, it's an ugly day in Glendale. It's like, I know what he's talking about.
As a side note, I don't know if it's just a personal thing or if like you guys can attest to this being a real thing, but like living and growing up in Los Angeles, there's not a lot of songs that talk about Los Angeles or like parts of it as much as like East Coast like bands talk about the East Coast. Yeah. And so it's really cool for me when songs just like snippet little parts of like where I live and where I grew up. And it's like, oh, I don't get that a lot. So like, even when it's in something as heavy as this, it kind of like takes me out of it for a second, just to be like, cool. So that's my little tidbit about.
No,
it's like multiple. It happens in all their music. They're one of. I think that's why I was driven to them too. It was just like I felt closer to this band than I would for lots of other bands with like this kind of heaviness because they are close. They're a local band for me.
I mean, 100% what you're saying. Like as you're saying that, I had the same reaction. Like Movie Life literally calls out our local mall we used to hang out at.
Yeah.
In our town. And then Brand New talks about Montauk and like, which is a Long Island thing. And then, Taking Back Sunday. Oh, Straight Light Run. There's literally a song where he gives these street directions.
He gives you directions, street directions.
Those are real streets, like that we know, yeah.
And I was like, oh, I know exactly where he's headed. Or like the Strider talks about their love of 7-Eleven. I mean, going to 7-Eleven. I mean, that's all we used to do. I used to remember doing that all the time. Yeah.
We have I have like Tom Petty And I think that's it. And the mention of Hollywood in song.
Yeah. Or like the Palisades Cliffs by Thursday. Like there's so many things that are like so specific. But yeah, but I think it's great. Like, but yeah, but also having lived near Glendale for the last decade of my life, when I see it's an ugly day in Glendale, I know what that sky looks like.
It's muggy, it's nasty, it's hot.
Yeah.
It's like the only humid time.
Yeah.
Gut punch. There's a lot of gut punches, but like, so he goes to visit his grandmother, right? Who's senile and now is older. What does he say? Yeah, she outlived you. I mean, oh, that's crazy, man. That's crazy thought.
I never knew it was the grandma. I thought maybe it was like, well, I like the specific here because it's kind of like he's sharing something about what she did when she was alive. Like maybe she just like was friendly with this woman or something, or
I went to grandma. That's where I went immediately because I feel like that made sense to go because the senility of it is, I imagine, because if I do my math right, she's 60. If his mom was 69, right, and let's just assume at the minimum a 20-year age gap between his mother and his grandmother, right?
Yeah.
Just at the minimum, then the woman's 89. So that's why I imagine I went to a grandmother who isn't senile. But I mean, that's the beautiful thing about lyrics is they could be up for interpretation. It could just be someone who knew his mom. But because the other thing was that the now has outlived you part. I feel like that was what got me to think it was the grandmother, his grandmother.
Yeah, it's like the parents should never bury their children.
Yep. I'll say yep to that one more time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is I like that in so last song he's kind of like, no, I'm not gonna do anything with your religion whatsoever. And then here he's kind of softened a bit. I think we've kind of got past anger a little bit. I don't know if we're not nearly at acceptance here, but like I think at this point he's like, fine, for you, I will give you a blessing, and because he even says like, may the Lord mighty God bless keep you forever. I mean, that's toning down the anger at both God and his mom.
Yeah.
It's coming around a little bit to not being so angry about everything.
I mean, words like that, even if you don't believe in them, they're comforting, right? Like
Yeah.
hearing
Right.
people saying
Right.
that about someone that you're losing is comforting.
I also think again with the great writing in this, I mean, we travel, right? We go from Glendale, California, where it's an ugly day in Glendale, where she lived her adult life, right? And then we're going to be in her hometown in Norfolk, which I believe was in
Nebraska, I think.
Nebraska, yeah, where she grew up. And like, so now it's like we're kind of at a memorial service where she's started from. Um, and like he talks about like being next to that tree that caught your eye. I walked the ground you grew on with my brother at my side. And like this idea of going back and kind of like, and we're gonna get more of this too as the album goes on, kind of like realizing how much he didn't really know about his mom. And you'll never know, right? Like that feeling of like, oh, you used to like hang out here. This is where you grew up, and like this is where we're going to say goodbye to you. It's yeah.
It's
He's
weird.
talked about it. He's talked about it in his podcast that they went there to go do that and kind of see where and figure out, and talk to her old friends and everyone and kind of get a sense of who she was there, and just see everything. And I think she's buried there too. So they went to go bury
Yeah.
her, in Nebraska.
That's a big trip to take because Nebraska, I imagine, is very different than Glendale, California.
Right. Well, like for me, like I lost my grandfather like a few years after this, and he was kind of the paternal figure for me. But I had to go to India to take his ashes.
Oh wow,
Afterwards.
really?
So it was a really lengthy process, and it just like
Wow.
really didn't allow. It took about a month and a half because you have to pass everything through customs because it's human remains.
Yeah.
And it's just and we had the procession in Glendale at Forest Lawn, and then had to go out to India and do it, and it's just
Wow.
very different to have like an American style procession at a
Oh
funeral
sure.
home, and then we're in next to a river in a village in India, when they have these chutes from bridges that you pour the ashes down that go into the river and they just like disperse into it. It's just two wildly different things of how life kind of experiences.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that must have been like a very powerful experience.
It was, I'd never been there before in my life or anything
Yeah.
like that too. So it was
Hmm.
a lot.
Yes, yeah. Oh, that's incredible. But yeah, that's part of it, right? Like going back to where I mean, that's the thing. Like I think also when we're talking about it, like you as a grandkid or being a kid or something, like these adults in your life, we come into this world and they're fully formed who they like they're adults. That's who they are.
Hmm.
And this idea of like them being young like you were once, and you would never have it be able to experience that because it's before your time, you know. But they had these lives before you, you know. All right. The next track is called 8 Seconds.
8 seconds. Not 7, not 9, but 8. That's a typical bull ride. That's what you want to hang on for.
Is
I
that
didn't know
true?
that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the when you go for bull riding, that is the amount of time you're supposed to stay on.
That's
That
it?
is that's it.
I thought it was.
Do you want to try to stay on a bull for 8 seconds, man? Like
Uh,
I would get on and be flung right off like a
I always just
clown.
assumed it was as long as possible kind of thing.
No, that's
Ha-
all you need. All you need is 8. You need 8 seconds.
eight counts as a bull ride?
8 counts, the full bull ride. All because of some stupid movie I watched. That I forget who was in that movie. 8 seconds. Hang on. Hang on. 8 seconds was a movie, yeah. Luke Perry was in. Oh, that's why I watched
I
it.
don't know.
Luke Perry was in it. That's why I watched it. I mean, come on. That's yeah.
What was the Fifth Element? What are you talking about?
No, this was about the same time, the 94. Yeah, 1994. Here, this is this basic Lane Frost is a cowboy who rises to become a professional bull riding champion in the 1980s. It's all about Luke Perry being a bull rider, and
Wow.
that's how I learned about 8 seconds. You have to stay on the bull for 8 seconds. That's what counts.
Well,
Mm.
that is a interesting movie that I never heard of. But you know what else
That
is?
wasn't the actor I thought he was gonna say.
Yeah, I just
It's
not
like,
too. I'm
tell me
like
what the
Luke.
No,
Yeah,
Luke Perry. No, it's Luke Perry. Luke Perry.
I was gonna say. You know what 8 Seconds is the name of? It's the name of a club in Gainesville, Florida.
Is it really?
Well, yeah, it's the
Is that
venue.
is that the venue he was at?
It was the venue he was
Okay.
playing at. Yeah. Uh, so yeah, if anybody doesn't know what Fest is, it is like the punk rock festival.
Hmm.
It's been going on for a very long time. They basically take over Gainesville, and like every bar and club is a venue, and punks from all over show up. It's usually around Halloween time, like
Mhm.
hence the why new Halloween. Um, and yeah, every every legit punk band has played this fest at some point. And I've never gone. Josh? Have you
I've
gone?
I've
never
no.
gone. No.
Yeah, I have friends who go pretty often, but I just have never gotten the. Well, it's also because it's Florida. And
I
Yeah,
tried.
that's
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
yeah.
gonna. It's not a place I go. Although my family's all there. It's not a place I often go to.
This one, I mean, this is I describe this song as just pain and fury.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just we now get the details that were alluded to in New Halloween, and in a minute and a half, we learn basically the moment he found out what happened. He was playing fast, right? Um, a missed call with a message attached. We need to talk when you have the chance. I stood frozen in that Gainesville venue, not knowing how to react.
I, j- I there's not much like lyric like we just get the story here. There's not a lot to not a lot to like expand upon because he's very descriptive and
Yeah.
explains the situation. And you're like, wow, we're in the moment where he just found out. I love the stuff that is it curtains already. I haven't learned my lines. Like he's like, I'll just make it up as I go, at this point because I don't even know what to do. It's crazy craziness in this song.
Well, you'll never be ready. You'll never be
No,
ready for that
right,
moment. Like, and
right.
I look, I got a cell phone call at like 1:30 in the morning from my dad, and I'm like, and I was like, well, this is not a good phone call. Like, I had
Yeah.
yeah.
that eternity that was 2 seconds before I answered the phone was like literally me thinking like when I pick up this phone, my whole life's about to change, you know, and I don't know what's gonna happen.
7:22. It was 7:22 in the morning. My dad called, and I was at the table and across from my wife, and I remember saying it out loud. I said, "Why are you calling me this early?"
Hmm.
And I knew it. That was the first one he called. and I knew it instantly. But yeah, it's that moment, that frozen moment, like, all right, from here on out, I am improvising everything I do for the rest of my for weeks, because that's so you're never ready. It disappears.
The bridge on this one too, where he kind
It's
of like
crazy.
finally
Mhm.
explains what happens. Like, not surprising, I put off the call. So yeah, we're getting the truth. Like, he saw he had the message, and he didn't make the call. Right? He just continued to go about his night. He decompartmentalized. He wasn't ready to, like, you know, he wasn't ready for his life to change, basically. I socialized and put up a wall, anything to prolong the chances before confirming she was really gone. I crossed Southwest 2nd Street, very specific detail. Like, I
Right.
love that. The
Mhm.
specificity is so powerful. I made the call and stared at my feet. And then you get, she passed away about an hour ago while you were on stage living the dream. Like, ugh,
What a good
ugh.
bridge. Good
Yeah.
bridge.
I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, like, that guilt, it comes back. It's like, and that's what he's
Mhm.
struggling with a lot as well. There's the religious part, but there's also the guilt of, like, I knew my mom was sick, but I still went on this tour because this is my dream. This is what she wanted for me. She wants me to be living my dream, but it means I'm not there for this crucial moment, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
It just reminds me of I will never pronounce this song right, but like Guernica from Brand New. Just
Yeah,
the songs about bands being away when their loved ones die, and
yeah, 100%. Yeah. Which, funny enough, I'm not funny, but like, if this album was like my, like, what I turned to when I lost my mom, Guernica, which was written about, I think, the singer's grandfather passing away. I
Mhm.
remember using Guernica for that moment in my life. So, music's very important, people.
Yeah.
Music, very important. Music is very important.
It's there for the good and the bad, Um,
I like what you said about just like specifically referencing like Southwest Second Street and things like that. I think it's really it makes songs so believable, and I think it like makes that like anger and that like think why would you remember something like that, like it
right.
because it's important, and it's such a small it makes everything feel like you're rooted in the realness of what's happening because those things are peppered in there.
Well, and I think it allows us into his experience even more
Yeah,
so. Like
because
like
it's more specific than just being like in Gainesville, Florida. It's like
right.
the exact pinpoint of
Yeah,
like you guys were saying that the time the phone call comes in is burned in your brain. You don't.
absolutely. Yeah. And, like, if it was something like I crossed the street outside the venue, like, you could say that and it's very clear, but there's something about, like, the name of the street that, like, exactly, it's like, oh, he knows exactly, like you just said, he knows exactly where he was.
Mhm.
And now you know too, and you're taking that all in. Um yeah, I think this song's incredible. So we're gonna play it. Here is 8 seconds. Next track, Palm Dreams.
The
So we're gonna
first
shift.
single. First single.
This is my
The
favorite song on the album.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. I mean, but it's also like, again, it's such an important song. Again, he sings on my own in this song, like, that
Mhm.
part of it,
Yeah.
which is, again, it hits so much harder than you would expect. Like, just those words, like, what that means, and to have him sing it, and it really, it's just so effective. Um, but yeah, I think this one, I love the title of this one, because this is him questioning, like, what who was this person? Like, did I know this person? Why did you leave Nebraska and come to, basically Hollywood, right? Like, at that
Mhm.
area. There's a quote here when the song premiered on NPR that came with a quick backstory by Jeremy. And he said, when you lose someone, you also lose their side of the story. Palm Dreams was written around the realization that I never had a full understanding of why my mother moved from Nebraska to California in the 70s. I assumed that because she was from a small town, her eyes were wide to the concept of Hollywood. I'm sure someone else in my family could tell me, but it wouldn't be her answer. If this song inspires anyone to ask the questions they never asked their loved ones, I'd call it a success.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I love that, again, we talked about earlier, that this decision to be this vulnerable and put this out in the world, like, you're just gonna cause a lot of people to come to you. But like, I love hearing this because it's like he's trying to help everyone else. He's trying to like
Yeah.
warn people, like, don't do what I
Don't,
did.
yeah, don't
Right.
make my mistakes.
Well, it's harkening back to the um, first track of taking things for granted, and
Yeah,
just not hearing. So going back, like one of the things he talked about in that song, "Take It for Granted," was just having a conversation with his mom. Here would have been a great chance to have a conversation with his mom. I'm like, well, why'd you move out to California in the '70s? It is something as simple as that we take for
Well,
granted,
like,
not
as
being able
like
to do
an
that.
Asian
Yeah,
woman too, it's such a
yeah.
it really kind of is of like why of anywhere.
yeah. No, it's yeah, it's like that idea of like also I think you are born where you're born. You don't think about that, right? Like
Yeah.
he lived here his whole life, and like that question, like you just think again when you're a kid or when you're growing up, it's hard to like understand that people had lives before you. Again, it's just that's not how we're built. And then eventually you have to learn to explore and ask people questions and learn about that stuff. But yeah, it's like, oh, I'm sure he was like, yeah, my mom lives in Glendale, California. That's where I'm
Yeah.
from. That's where
Yeah,
I
she
live.
came yeah, she came here and that's all I know. Kind of thing. Now I know Jeff knows it, but Phil, there is no better feeling than actually going 65 miles per hour on the 5 freeway at 5 o'clock in the evening.
I
It is a high that does not exist.
I can't, because that's like the main road, right? 65 is at the main road.
The
No,
five, the
the five
five,
is,
but
yeah,
also in the middle of
rush
the
hour.
heart of rush hour. You do
Yeah.
not go 65 on the five very often at five.
It's the freeway that goes through like Burbank and Glendale around
Yeah,
Okay.
downtown, and then it takes you
Okay.
to San Diego. So it's
yeah,
where it's everyone just hops on it, and it's grid, and it goes through Orange County as well. So it's just gridlocked for like 50, 60 miles.
I can't
yeah,
Just
even imagine.
hell.
Oh my God.
yeah.
I
I
remember
live
the
off the five.
do you? All
So
right, it's funny.
yeah,
I
I also live
I
off the
live off the
five.
five. Yeah.
I don't live off the five.
The
I
five.
live off 93. How about that? But we go. So the one time I went to California and in LA, there was only one time I went on the highway, and it was to go from downtown LA. I stayed at the hotel that what was it, In the Line of Fire, the Clint Eastwood movie they shot at the movie at the end of the movie with the elevator sequence. That hotel, and then went to a Dodger game, and that's as far out of I went and traveled. And I remember being like, there is a lot of traffic here. This is a lot
Yes.
to, and that's something because coming from a guy who grew up in New York.
Well, I can't tell, but depending which direction you got in Dodge Stadium, you might have been on the five.
Yeah.
I might have been, so I might have been on the five at some point. I just remember going like, wow, this is taking a while. I didn't expect this, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. My rule of thumb is I don't. It doesn't bother me because I just assume everything's going to take 45 minutes when it should take 15, and you know
Long Island prepared you for that because
it did. Yeah,
that's really this is what it is over there too.
yeah. But yeah, for this one, I mean, I agree, Josh. This song's incredible. It just like this idea of like him going through her stuff, basically, like taking
Yeah.
apart our home I dug through 40 years all alone. Like that, just the loneliness he's feeling in this song is like, and again, on my
Well,
own, that's repeated and repeated.
I don't know if you guys have had to do that, but like going through someone's entire life of collections and like personal affects and just kind of donating most of it and throwing it away is
Yeah,
it like that's my nightmare. Is just like
Yeah.
everything I hold close and personal dear is just actual junk to everybody else.
it's wild,
Um,
right? Yeah,
and like unless it has like monetary value, it's just junk. And like but it's not. It's like the actual they're treasures, and just that's a nightmare that I can't wrap my brain around.
well, I mean, it's that old saying, like one person's trash is another person's treasure. Like
Yeah,
that's the thing. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm sitting in a room just filled with like
McDax like
collectibles and
tattoos.
comic books and records and like just like the stuff that stuff that fills my cup in life and is so important to me. Like yeah, one day, you know, some relative down the line, hopefully a very long time from now, um, I have a goal to live to see the 90s again. It's very important. I want to live through the 90s again. Uh,
That's
A
a really
second
cool
time.
one.
That's a good goal.
yeah,
I wish you luck, sir.
thank you. But yeah, like that idea of like, oh, one day someone's gonna go through all this, and like, and like, what about like your journals and stuff, like the stuff you're not supposed to share with anybody, and you're like, well, one
Yeah.
day someone might actually read this, and it might be like 80 years from now, but it's wild.
You never know.
Um, there was something. Oh, the whole idea of like palm trees too. I love this because was it all palm trees placed where they shouldn't be that made you feel complete in this land of make believe? Because Phil, you know this, that palm trees are not
They're
they
not
don't
native to Los
they're not
Angeles and
native to
Southern
Los Angeles.
They're not native to California. No, I did not know that. No.
Yeah,
So,
well, do you know? Yeah, Josh, you want to explain it?
yeah, so they were brought here to make it look like an oasis because of the desert climate of Southern California. So when they had movies and people like driving down the streets, you see palm trees and you think you're in like a better, more sophisticated, like higher end
Huh.
part of like it just like it was to bring like class to like the greater Los Angeles area and like Southern
Huh.
California as a whole.
Yeah,
No, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
yeah. Also, what's also crazy is they're known to only live about 100 years before they start falling apart. And guess what we're coming towards about a lot of these palm trees?
Oh, good. Great. Excellent. Excellent. Good to know. I just to keep it going, I did a quick search of where I stayed in LA and then how I would have driven. Good job, Phil. Driven to Dodger Stadium. I was on South Figueroa Street. Would have been the way it would have went.
Figueroa? Okay. Okay, so
So no,
you didn't go on the five. Yeah.
I didn't do it on the five. I didn't do the five. So so get to check that one off my box. The next time I go to LA, I'll go sit on the five for 5 hours,
No,
like it's Long Island again.
yeah, no. Next time you're in LA, Phil, we'll sit in the five traffic. It'll be
Yeah,
great.
just yeah, what are
I
we doing this afternoon?
I have a feeling it's long enough that we could probably do a whole episode in the car.
Yeah,
Oh,
Sweet.
there's an episode idea in the car. All right.
yeah. We've been on a day. We'll drive down to San Diego emo night, and we'll
Love it.
yeah. Let's play this one. This is
Okay.
yeah. Here is Palm Dreams. Track 8, softer spoken.
I feel where he's in. So he brings up catharsis,
Yeah,
which is usually, to be frank, through pain. Right. To get there, it's gonna hurt. It's not like it's like having an epiphany. It's the same kind of thing. It's through pain. It's actually that's where it's supposed to come from. And I feel like this is the song that I think we're starting to shift. Like we kind of have all the emotions in here, but I think we're kind of shifting toward resolution. I guess that sounds weird to say because I find that I get that toward the end where it's like I've always relied on melody, so I've always gone to music to kind of like help me out, right? But then he says I've come to rely on love, but there's an absence in my heart when I know when I know I have enough. Like so there's a lot of sadness there, but I feel like there's also the smallest smidgen of hope to go towards something.
yeah,
Right. I feel like we're headed, which makes sense. I mean, really, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 songs left in the album. Like we're starting to shift to um dealing with it is a weird way to put it, but we're starting to make the shift to go toward that catharsis. I really, because you got the city named Catharsis and the other called Empty. I mean, that's kind of where so like we're at that point where like I'm going to make a decision toward one of these two things. You know what I mean? That's what it seems like he's gonna do.
yeah. Well, because ever since you died, I can't control anything. Everything feels new, built from catastrophe. Just when I get a hold, it slips away from me. So he's trying, like he's got these moments where he's like, oh, I think I'm getting a handle on this. Oh, it's
Right.
um, I've always relied on melody. I've come to rely on love, but there's an absence in my heart when I know I have enough. So he's understanding. It's like he's lost her and he's lost. I mean, this love from his mom and that he's had his whole life. But that is a very specific kind of love that you get from your parents, and he knows he has love in his life,
Mm.
and he just hasn't been able to kind of like fully remember that. Right? It just feels like this emptiness that because of her loss.
I really like the line vacationing somewhere in between a city named Catharsis and the other
Yeah.
called Empty. And I think that kind of just like puts you're not there, but you're not where you were. You're just in this like purgatory of like emotions where you're just trying to figure it out.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a really great way to like illustrate that feeling. All right, track 9, Posing Holy.
This would sum up just the title, my childhood of going to church on Sunday. I'm just gonna pose holy, like I'm gonna put on the face of it. That's what I am. It's kind of the vibe. I mean, he's about appearing religious, and then that's really all I got with that one.
I love the phrase posing holy though. Like it's such
It
a
Yeah,
it's
it
like I've never heard it before, but it's like it's such a funny way of like I'm not a funny way, but it's just like a it catches my attention. Posing
yeah.
holy.
It's
Uh
not a normal phrase, so like
no.
it kind of takes a second to try to figure out what they're trying to say with it. I think it's pretty straightforward, but it's not. You don't hear it and immediately your brain just automatically translates it.
A sugar-scented sinful message that everyone saw through. Now
I, it,
subterfuge and Manhattan blues seem to dictate my mood. It's a big opening.
it is. It's a big open. It's like I'm not fully where I don't think I fully get where he's getting at with that. I'll be honest. But I feel like he's talking about that time where we're putting everything on.
Right.
Insofar that like I remember having the vibe of, well, you're gonna fake it till you make it to get
Right.
back
Hmm.
to whatever new normal is gonna be, but you're gonna put on a face and just do your best for that day to get to what new normal is going to be, and kind of you fake it till you make it, and so I just think it's such a fun way of posing holy. Like I'm just it sounds like Mike Ham would have written that lyric, like
It does, yeah.
it
Yeah.
feels like that would be something Gerard would come up with. It just screams it's something he would come up with, but yeah, it's just like you're putting it on a face. This is I'm doing the things that you would expect me to do at this point post death. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I always find this one it's funny because he's so specific on all these other songs. This one's the one
Well,
where it's a little more vague, I think,
yeah,
which is totally fine. Like you know, you should have different kinds of songs.
Yeah.
I definitely like it's an initiation conducted at bedside to a steady beat to help keep time. I mean, is that like a prayer, you know, like trying a
right.
prayer? Yeah. Yeah, it's
Which is hard because he's been up to this point very specific at times. 8 seconds. He's like he tells you the street he's on. Like he's so then we get into something a little less specific, and it kind of particularly this late in the album. Even though I was delighted when I got to listen to this, and I was like 32 minutes. This is what I'm talking about. That's like
Yeah.
we're in, we're out. But like this is that part where I'm like, we're late in the album and we're gonna get it's a very ethereal, cerebral kind of song,
yeah.
which I don't know if it fits the album because it's so specific otherwise.
Yeah, I think so. But you know what? I think this does serve a function because as we get to the last two songs, they also, especially the last song, I feel like we'll get into it. That
Yeah,
also feels kind of like, oh, where are we right now? But I actually really appreciate that, and we'll talk about that later when we get there.
I
Um,
100% I 100% agree with you. Okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, but we'll be there in a second. The next track is the penultimate. It's called Water Damage,
water
10th track.
damage, water damage.
This title is so great, especially once you get into what the song is. There are things; these are just images and ideas, thoughts that you just don't want in your head. You want to
Right,
remember the person who died as they were, not as they were disintegrating into a disease, right?
right.
And that those little details and the release of agony in this one is like because of that, right? Like trying to get back to like who she was, not who she was at the end.
Right. And I think and it's that horribleness, but that's the kind of lasting impression you have, of who they were. And you're like, but that wasn't them. Like that was just the last
Yeah.
memory bit of what we had of them.
Uh,
Which just sucks. It just sucks when that's what you get left. That's what you're left with. It sounds terrible to say it that way, but that is the very truth of it. It sucks when that is what you're left with.
Well, it's and the title water damage, it's so many different things. Like, what does water damage do? It warps something, right? Like
Right.
it doesn't like destroy it, but it's no longer the smooth surface anymore. It's just distorted. And like I imagine he opens up, like, you couldn't help but spill your glass onto the nightstand, so that wood raised and cracked. You came to have such shaky hands,
Right.
suggesting like this was kind of
Mhm.
like one of the things that's happened to her. But I imagine when he's going through the house and everything, he sees that nightstand, he sees that water damage, and it's like the metaphor for all of what happened to her, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, her coffee cups are down from 4 down to 3 because she broke the handle. It's like you're seeing the small physical things that accompany disease and illness. And
Mhm.
like that's just it's the worst when that's what those are the visceral memories you end up inheriting, and you have to either you have to live with them in your head, and it sucks. It sucks.
I
I think
mean,
they don't, I
go
think it
ahead.
takes a second to like catch on to those things too, because it happens like
Yeah.
once or twice, and you're just like, okay, but then when they start to pile, it's you have to like convince yourself that that's what's happening, because like you don't want to admit that someone's like deteriorating in front of your eyes.
Absolutely, yeah. Because you're still holding on to hope, and he's talked about that too, right? Like you're trying to keep the class half full, right? You're not like,
Mhm.
oh, it's okay, you don't need that many coffee cups or whatever it is. It's like, but these are all signs that are leading to this.
Of water damage, like because it's not just legitimately saying about it, it distorts it misshapen it discolors, it does all that, but it's also like Josh, you kind of picked on it. It's something you have to start to notice. Like you don't notice it at first, and all of a sudden, like, oh, there's water spots up there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like it's something you have to then start piecing together that there's something else wrong. Like that could mean there's a leaky pipe wherever it is. I deal with this all the time. I have an old house.
Hmm.
But it's like it's like part of you have to piece these things together. And that's why these titles they're so simple but so smart and so good.
I think also where this song builds to, it builds to
Yeah.
this, like I said earlier, it's like this release of agony, because it's like he's just like towards the end, it's like it's been playing over and over. The words, they echo over and over. When you leaned in and said, "We both know what this is,"
Hmm.
like she knew if this was the end, right?
Right.
And whether he could hear or not, or believe it or not, but then he gets into this pained scream. These words at the end of like, and I haven't recovered since. No, I haven't recovered since. No, I haven't recovered.
Right.
It's yeah, it's. I mean, this whole album is like a gut punch, but like I don't know, this it's almost like here we're like, ugh, because you kind of like if you are going on this journey, you're like, okay, maybe he is getting better, maybe he is healing, and it's like, oh no, we're not.
No, we're not.
Let's play this one. Here is Water Damage. All right, we are in the final track. This album is anguish and pain, so of course you have to have Julian Baker on this track with you
Well,
to close out the album.
obviously, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just inherent. Yes, you
There's
have to.
nobody else.
There's nobody else. It's like what, and I love her juxtaposition of her voice to his. She has this like haunting sound that she's like backing him with, and it's just like, I love. I mean, I love her voice anyway for everything, but
But it
it's
really it fits. It like well,
Yeah.
one, I love when bands go the two singers. I've always been. I mean, that's the Take It Back Sunday me coming out. But like or Alkaline Trio, I just love it. Or even
Mhm.
Lawrence Arms. Like I can just keep going. And it's like I love when you get the two singers going, particularly when they work really well against each other. And like because tonally they're very different sounding, but yet
Oh.
they make this sound, and it's a beautiful sound when it's going. Yeah.
all right. This song is called Skyscraper,
Okay.
and
All right.
and it's
All right.
really interesting because we've talked about obviously the Glendale, California area a lot. We talked about Nebraska, but suddenly we're in New York City, which is really interesting. I think that, and we'll talk about why that happens, or at least why we think it does. Um, but it's like time has passed, right?
Yep.
That's what I'm getting, and
Yeah.
he's somewhere else. Maybe he's on tour. Maybe whatever he's doing, he's in New York, right? Um, this and at the top of the skyscraper, 102 floors, New York City. It was yours. It was yours. You lived there under the lights. You lived there under the lights. It's like I don't even know who he's talking about necessarily because he doesn't live there and she didn't live there.
I I remember either reading or like hearing it in a pod, him talk about it, but I think he took his mom to New York before she died.
Okay.
And then that's what the song's talking of, like
Yeah.
that's where he's talking about show it like going on top, like I think Empire State Building or something
Yeah.
like that, to be able to like show her the things that she wasn't able to do before, you know, she was
Well,
about to die.
that's really great to know. When you say that, then I can imagine it's like him remembering them being up there together, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're looking at down at life, right? Life happening for so many people. Because when you're in New York, you're like, oh, there's a lot of people here, and and you're like below the busy streets, we watch your dreams unfold. New York City, it's all yours, it's all yours. Because I think there is something, especially with the loss of someone so important to you in your life, and we are but one individual of billions in this world, right? And
Right.
there's
Thinking
so
about
many.
other people's like other interconnected like networks of people they know in lives, and that it's just like multiplied by like billions is
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It's just there's like, and that's the thing. Like, and I, not to like go back to my like my trauma from when my mom passed, but like I had to fly back suddenly to New York from LA. And I remember going to the airport that morning and never having really sat there and thought, just all the people in the waiting room being like, I wonder what everyone's going through right now.
Yeah.
Because I never thought I'd be going through this here, silently sitting in this busy airport. But all these people are going through something. I don't know. It's just like you look around, you're like, oh right, we're all in this on our own journeys, but like we're all on the journey.
That's what I like about the song is like he kind of and it's because we're at the closure part of the escapade. Because you even hear that tonally when like he built like audibly they're building towards something. And like because he like there's a singing part and then he because all he's doing is repeating you live here, you live there under the lights. And like but eventually that just gets louder and louder and like we're building vocally toward um catharsis, like to finally letting go and accepting what it is. And I do like that basically he now I kind of got the vibe that at the end he now can look out and just because like he said you live there under the lights like that there she's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
That he'll see her everywhere, but that's not necessarily a bad thing anymore,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, yeah, I think that's the closest you can get to closure with this. Like it's
Yeah.
the realization that that person is gone, but yet they're always there. They're in everything, right? Like everyone who's ever gone is still they they lived so you could live, and everyone's doing the same thing, right? You live there under the lights.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he's yeah, right, and he sings in this one again too. It's like there's a comfort there. And then, of course, the song ends and reverbs out, and you think like, "Oh, wow, that's the album." And then, what do you get?
You get yeah, you get that moment you're sitting there like,
A
well, that
sucker punch.
this can't
Yeah.
get. I mean, like, how much worse can this get? You know, and no, yeah, you get the sucker punch at the end. Well, I mean,
Well, is it? I mean, it, it
it's
is
I
it is
didn't.
it is a punch, but is it a bad like? Because
No,
No,
also
it's
because you're
not
you're
good.
I
it's
don't
not an
know
uppercut. It just kind of comes.
yeah,
I think you expect it, but then you it's kind of one of those things where you're like, oh, they should do this, but you're hoping they don't.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, because like I was saying earlier, this is like the theme of the album is basically him like getting the courage to finally listen to the message.
yeah.
And
So
then
what?
and we get to experience that together, which
Right?
is kind of important, I think, as much as it is kind of a gutter punch, Jeff. And I think you're going the same place I was going to go with this, is that it is kind of a gut punch at the end, but also it's like, but we kind of go through it together.
Hmm.
And there's some comfort, like how people go to religion to find comfort. There's some comfort in knowing that all of us together have just kind of we went through this album together and survived, and we can also possibly move on to whatever the new normal is going to be. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, I think you're 100% right. I mean, he's sharing this so we all go through it because like there's a version where he posed the dramatic question at the top of the album saying, I can't listen to that message. And, he could have written a line that said at the end, like, and then today I listened to that last message or whatever, there's
I've done the same thing.
right. But like doesn't even say that because the whole song again, which I love this song because it is a little more abstract from the rest of the album.
Yeah.
And I think it works better than the Posing Holy version of it. Or this one, I'm like, oh, I want it to be more abstract now because that's what happens. Is you're kind of like life goes on and like you're feeling all these different things, and it kind of gets to this point where you're like, okay, I feel like a catharsis is happening here. And then to hear the voicemail and to use the voicemail that he has mentioned he couldn't listen to, but he's gotten to this point where not only can he listen to it, he can put it at the end of the album and let everyone else hear it too.
Right.
I mean, that's healing.
Right. That's a really good way of putting it. No, you're right. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and it's I mean there I mean it's so I mean this is just well like any voicemail you get from like a parent. Like it's just usually kind of like, "Hey, sorry I'm not home. I'm at
Right.
CVS. Like we'll be back later." It's like
Yeah.
it's so mundane, right? But it's like the most important probably one of the most important things he cherishes in his life. Just like little mundane voicemail from his mom.
I wonder if like hearing that voicemail for the first time, having that like long struggle of never doing it and then listening to it, and then like that's all it is. It's just this simple like, hey, missed you, just letting you know I'm doing this, bye. And you're just like I would laugh almost in that kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
it would not in like this is it's just like ethereally funny. Like it's just why was I scared of this, kind of thing. But it's the idea of it. It's not really the what it could have been because
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the what is it? Schrodinger's cat in the
Yes.
box. Like you
yeah,
don't know if the cat's alive or dead until you open the box. But it's like, yeah, he just knows it's the last message, and like, I guess also it's like because it's the last new information he's gonna get from her, the last new thing she's gonna say to him, and what it could be. Like, could it be like this? Like, is she gonna like tell him like something profound that he didn't know? Is it
right.
gonna be? How is he gonna react when he hears it? But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And when he finally listens to it, and it's like, we're dropping prescriptions off at CVS. Won't be home when you get there. Bye bye. Like it is. There is a relief almost because this is what life is. This is what really life is. Life isn't like these giant profound moments. This is life. The small
Yeah.
things.
This is the little conversation that he wished he kind of had in the first song. Like it's just like taking this little moment not for granted. I mean, yeah, it's just she's telling him where she's gonna go CVS real quick. That's it. But that's
Yeah.
life, like you just said, Jeff. That is life in a nutshell. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go to CVS and get a 15-mile long receipt.
You know, it's just an absolutely beautiful way to end this album.
It is.
Yeah.
It's
Agreed.
so yeah, let's play Skyscraper and close out the final album on Touche Amore's Stage 4. All right, well that is the album Touche Amore Stage 4, a just a powerful piece of art. Really, I'm so grateful for this album personally. To go from like, oh my god, I don't know how this man went through this, to thank God this man went through this and shared this with me so I could go through it myself and have someone to understand me.
Yeah.
Someone who just understands what I too have gone through, and that's the beauty of it is that it's a oh, it's
It's
so
like
bleak. It feels bleak to say, but like death is the communal experience we're all going to share at some point, right?
Yep.
And that's very messed up to say, but it's the truth. It is the truth. Okay, now that I depressed myself a little bit, I'm just kidding. No, I'm gonna no. It's
Yeah, they're gonna
it,
ask us to leave this diner after this conversation.
yeah.
Like,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy behind us is like, who the fuck are these
these
guys?
guys, yeah, jeez.
Jesus, man, lighten up, sad kid. All right, so all right, Jeff. This is gonna be. I know I jokingly say this every episode. I do legitimately mean these are going to be very hard questions because of this is an album I actually feel it's the sum of all. It's like it all works together as like one big communal thing. So let's do our best to dissect. Jeff, what do you think is the best song on the album?
This is like one of the hardest ones because there are so many good ones. Like not it's all good, but to pick one is like what you just said because it's so part of a full experience. Like
Yeah, yeah.
um, I'm gonna cheat and go with New Halloween only because of how I felt the first time I heard it, how I felt seeing them play this live like 5 weeks
Yeah.
before, while my mom had cancer 5 weeks before she passed away, and then how I felt every time I hear this song since. It's just incredible, incredible piece, incredible song.
Josh, what about you? What do you think is the best song on the album?
Best. I think the best song is "Flowers and You."
Flowers,
From
yeah.
from a best. I think it does. It's an incredible album opener. It really lets you know what you're in for, and it's
Yeah.
just catchy as hell and just fun. Like on top of being really heavy, it's just I feel good listening to it. Like it just like brings energy into me, which is like
Yeah.
a good sign.
I'm so being the one who's never heard this album before, and it was like, all right, so I have like no directive connection. So I was like, what was the song that for me I connected most with? And because I feel like that's where I'm gonna go with this. And
Mhm.
I'm gonna say Rapture was a song I connected most with. I was just like, I I totally understand this song because my background raised a Roman Catholic and just I just felt the connection with this. I was like, yep, you know what? We're friends. So this is the song I'm gonna go with. Jeff, let's go to the other end of the spectrum. What is the skip? What is a song you would skip? You don't think we really need?
Well, obviously I'm putting an asterisk on this because
I
this is the one album
Yeah,
where I'm like, I wouldn't skip anything because they're all important, and because this really is a meditation on grief and a personal experience with grief, that I feel bad saying I would skip any. So I'm not going to skip any, but if I had to, just for the sake of this question, it's probably
yeah,
Posing Holy, just because it feels a little bit more abstract than the rest of the album.
Josh, what about you?
I'm in the exact same boat. Yeah, this
Yeah.
album is a listening experience. I think it's meant to be listened to front to back. So there's not really skipping something leaves you missing on an important aspect. But yeah, Posing Holy is just kind of the bottom of the good list.
I
Yeah,
I agree
exactly.
I agree with both of you. I feel like what it's trying to do is done better in other songs. And
There's also
like, yeah,
moments in it, yeah, that make me. I don't remember that song very much after
yeah.
listening to the whole album. It kind of just leaves to be in there. But
Well,
that's
and I feel like it's kind of it just like I said, it was like it's late in the album and it feels very vague when really we've been very specific this whole time, and it just feels like I don't. It needs to go. I like saying this. Like it needs to go back in the oven at 350 for 10 more minutes, and then I think it'll be ready. I just that's where I think that one is. All right, Jeff. Good luck with this one. What do you think is the sleeper song? The song that people are sleeping on?
I mean, it's every song. It's
the
everyone.
whole album. If you
Yeah,
haven't listened to this album, yeah,
yeah. It's funny. Like this, it changes every time I think about the album. With today, it's Water Damage.
Water damage. Yep.
Yeah, I just again, I love the metaphor. I think it's very powerful, and I just think where he gets emotionally in his performance in the song is like it's just on a very gripping album. Somehow it gets another level on this song.
Yeah. Yeah. Josh, what about you? What is a sleeper song?
I think Displacement is the sleeper song for me. It's early in the album, but it's like sandwiched between like just real heavy hitters, and I think it kind of just get. I always forget about that song, about how much I love it, I guess, and I think that's what makes it a sleeper because it's a list. The album's a listening experience. So like I don't like you were saying, all the singles were so just like this is a single. So
Yeah.
trying to
Just none of that.
trying to pick them out individually and like assess them as like an individual song is so difficult.
That displacement was second single. I just find that bonkers that it doesn't all right, whatever. I think the sleeper is 8 seconds. I feel it's
Mm.
this like wonderfully concocted song like in the middle of the album that you kind of just forget about because at this point you're like, good God, like what else is gonna happen with this guy? And it just you kind of work your way through it. So I'm just gonna say 8 seconds. That is for me the sleeper song. Those are the questions, Jeff. Those are the answers. Let me get through a couple of things. All right, folks at home, if you're watching us on the YouTube, hello everybody. If you're watching us on Spotify, hello audibly. Remember, we have TikTok, we have Instagram, Facebook, we have Threads. So follow us on one of those things. You can follow us. And then we also have a shop on TeePublic. Check out the Millennial Diner podcast on TeePublic. Remember to search Millennial Diner podcast. Or if you follow us on any of the platforms, it's in a link tree or the link in bio. So just click on that and you go right to it. Those are the designs made by our executive producer, my wife Megan, who frankly we need to start paying. I mean, to be honest, we just have to start paying her. So if you guys buy stuff, that money will go to her. I guarantee it. That's what I'm going with this week. Josh, thanks for coming on the
Thanks for
show.
having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Josh. I'm so excited to have you come in talk about this album. I know how important it was to you, and it's a beautiful album. So we needed a beautiful person to come and talk about it.
Any excuse to listen to it, I'm in.
All right, well, done with the food. They're kicking us out because we're too much of downers. They're a loss.
Yeah, they're a loss.
I'm gonna tap into the diner stereo system and throw on stage 4 and get everyone on our level.
Bag full of quarters we could just shove into the thing and just walk out too, like nothing ever happened.